Sicily sits at the center of the Mediterranean, yet it has never truly belonged to any single empire, nation, or culture. For thousands of years, ships have approached its shores from every direction. Some came to trade, others to conquer, and many to stay. Each arrival left something behind, but none ever erased what came before. Sicily did not become one thing. It became many. This island is often described as part of Italy, but geography tells a deeper story. Sicily is closer to Africa than to much of Europe. It stands between east and west, between ancient trade routes and modern shipping lanes. From the beginning, its position made it impossible to ignore. Whoever controlled Sicily could watch the sea, shape commerce, and influence the balance of power across the Mediterranean. That reality turned the island into a constant target. Long before modern borders existed, Sicily was already shaped by movement. Greeks built cities along its coasts. Romans expanded their reach across its fields. Arab scholars, merchants, and builders transformed its cities. Norman rulers arrived from the north, followed later by Spanish crowns and distant empires. Each group claimed the island, yet none could fully define it. Sicily absorbed influence without losing itself. Above all of this history stands Mount Etna. Rising over the eastern part of the island, it is one of the most active volcanoes on Earth. Etna has erupted for thousands of years, reshaping the land again and again. Lava flows have destroyed towns, altered coastlines, and created fertile soil that draws people back each time. Empires came and went, but the volcano remained. In Sicily, nature has always been the most powerful force. Life here has never been simple. Earthquakes have leveled cities. Eruptions have forced entire populations to flee. Invasions have brought both wealth and violence, yet people stayed. They rebuilt. They adapted. Sicily did not become fragile from this history. It became resilient. The island learned how to live with uncertainty and how to continue without waiting for stability. Today, Sicily appears familiar at first glance. Churches, ruins, beaches, and busy streets suggest a place well known to the modern world. But beneath the surface, the island still carries the weight of its layered past. Languages, customs, architecture, and traditions overlap in ways that feel natural to those who live here. Nothing is perfectly ordered. Nothing is entirely finished. That complexity is not a flaw. It is the essence of Sicily. This is not a story about famous landmarks or travel highlights. It is the story of an island shaped by fire, sea, and constant arrival. A place that survived by never choosing a single identity. A place that learned how to endure by remaining open, adaptable, and deeply human. To understand Sicily, one must look beyond its beauty and listen to the long rhythm of a land that has always existed between worlds. Sicily is not defined only by its land, but by the water that surrounds it. The Mediterranean Sea has always been the island's greatest connection to the outside world. Long before modern nations existed, These waters served as highways rather than barriers. Ships crossed them carrying goods, armies, languages, and ideas. Sicily stood directly in their path, impossible to bypass and impossible to ignore. The island's position placed it between multiple worlds. To the north lay Europe, with its expanding empires and shifting borders. To the south stretched Africa, linked by trade winds and short sea crossings. To the east and west, the Mediterranean opened into vast networks of ports and civilizations. Sicily became a meeting point where routes converged, making it both valuable and vulnerable at the same time. This geography shaped the island's destiny. Control of Sicily meant control of movement through the central Mediterranean. Whoever held the island could monitor trade, protect supply lines, or disrupt rivals. This strategic importance explains why Sicily experienced more invasions than most regions of Europe. It was never isolated, never protected by distance. Instead, it stood exposed at the heart of ancient maritime power. The coastline itself reflects this history. Natural harbors provided shelter for fleets and merchants, allowing cities to grow along the shore. Over time, ports became centers of commerce and culture, drawing people from distant lands. Each arrival brought new customs and knowledge, gradually layering Sicily with influences that blended rather than replaced one another. Inland, the island's terrain offered both opportunity and challenge. Rolling hills and fertile plains supported agriculture, while mountain ranges created natural divisions between regions. These internal boundaries prevented the island from forming a single dominant center. Instead, power shifted between cities, each connected outward to the sea rather than inward to a unified core. The sea also shaped daily life. Fishing communities depended on seasonal patterns and changing currents. Storms could isolate towns or destroy fleets without warning. At the same time, calm waters opened pathways to prosperity. For centuries, Sicilians learned to read the sea as carefully as they read the land, understanding that survival depended on respecting both. Even today, the Mediterranean remains central to Sicily's identity. Ferries, cargo ships, and fishing boats continue to trace routes once sailed by ancient traders and conquerors. The sea still brings movement, opportunity, and uncertainty. It reminds the island that its story has never been confined to its shores. Sicily's geography explains why it could never belong to one world alone. The island does not sit at the edge of history. It stands at its crossroads. Shaped by water, exposed to constant arrival, and open to influence from every direction, Sicily became a place defined not by isolation, but by connection. Its land tells one story, its sea tells another. Together, they explain why this island has always lived between worlds. Mount Etna dominates eastern Sicily in a way that few natural features dominate human life. It is one of the most active volcanoes on Earth, and for thousands of years it has shaped the land, the cities, and the mindset of those who live in its shadow. Etna is not a distant landmark. It is present, visible from miles away, constantly reminding the island that nature here is never passive. Unlike volcanoes that erupt once and fall silent, Etna is defined by repetition. Its eruptions are not rare disasters, but recurring events. Lava flows advance slowly, giving people time to respond, to watch, and sometimes to accept what cannot be stopped. Entire neighborhoods have been buried, rebuilt, and buried again. Roads have vanished under black stone, only to reappear decades later. This cycle has taught Sicilians a different relationship with danger, one based on adaptation rather than fear. The volcano also gives as much as it takes. Etna's eruptions enrich the soil with minerals, creating some of the most fertile farmland in the Mediterranean. Vineyards, orchards, and fields thrive on volcanic ground that appears harsh and lifeless at first glance. Generations of farmers have chosen to live close to the volcano, understanding the risk but valuing the land it provides. In Sicily, destruction and abundance exist side by side. Cities like Catania have grown and rebuilt under Etna's influence. Lava once reached the city's walls, altering its layout and architecture. After devastating eruptions and earthquakes, the city did not relocate. It adapted. Streets were redesigned, buildings reconstructed, and daily life continued beneath a volcano that never truly sleeps. Etna shaped not only the physical city, but also its identity. The presence of the volcano influenced belief as well. Ancient cultures viewed Etna as the home of gods and giants. Later generations saw it as a force to respect rather than control. Even today, eruptions draw scientists, photographers, and observers from around the world, all seeking to understand a process that continues to shape the island in real time. Etna reminds Sicily that permanence is an illusion. Land changes, cities shift, certainty is temporary. This understanding runs deep in Sicilian culture. Life is lived with awareness that stability can disappear, but also with confidence that rebuilding is always possible. The volcano does not dominate through sudden catastrophe alone. It shapes behavior slowly, over centuries. In this way, Etna reflects Sicily itself. Both have endured conquest, destruction, and renewal. Both resist being fixed into a single form. Fire has shaped the island's soil, its settlements, and its outlook on life. To understand Sicily, one must understand this constant presence of change. Here, survival is not about avoiding danger. It is about learning how to live alongside it. Sicily's history is often told as a sequence of civilizations, but on the island, time does not move in clean lines. New cultures did not arrive to erase what came before. Instead, they settled in, adapted, and built on top of existing worlds. What emerged was not a single identity, but a layered one, where influences accumulated rather than disappeared. The earliest major cities on the island were founded by Greek settlers. They brought with them language, philosophy, and systems of governance that reshaped Sicily's coastal regions. Temples rose above the landscape. Theaters were carved into hillsides, and cities were planned with an attention to space, proportion, and public life. Even today, these structures remain visible, standing as reminders of a time when Sicily was one of the cultural centers of the ancient Mediterranean. Roman rule followed, transforming the island into a vital agricultural engine of the empire. Sicily supplied grain that fed distant cities, linking its fields to the survival of Rome itself. Roads, aqueducts, and administrative systems connected the island more tightly to imperial power. Yet Roman influence did not erase Greek foundations. It settled alongside them, reshaping daily life while leaving earlier structures intact. Centuries later, Arab rulers arrived from North Africa, introducing new ways of farming, irrigation, and urban organization. Citrus groves, sugar cultivation, and advanced water management systems changed the island's economy and landscape. Cities grew more complex, with markets, gardens, and neighborhoods designed for climate and trade. Arabic language and science influenced local knowledge, leaving traces that persist in place names, architecture, and customs. The arrival of Norman rulers from Northern Europe added yet another layer. Instead of replacing what they found, they combined styles and traditions. Churches were built that blended Latin structures with Byzantine mosaics and Islamic design. Power was expressed not through uniformity, but through synthesis. Sicily became a place where differences coexisted rather than competed. This pattern repeated itself again and again. Spanish rule, local kingdoms, and distant empires all left their mark without fully reshaping the island into their image. Each influence became part of the whole, contributing to a cultural depth rarely found elsewhere in Europe. What makes Sicily unique is not the number of civilizations that pass through it, but the way their presence remains visible at the same time. Ancient temples stand near medieval churches. Arabic arches frame Norman towers. Roman roads still guide modern movement. History here is not preserved behind glass. It is lived, walked through, and accepted as part of daily life. Sicily did not become powerful by enforcing a single identity. It endured by allowing many to exist together. Its strength lies in accumulation rather than replacement, in memory rather than control. This layered history explains why the island feels familiar yet foreign, ancient yet alive. Sicily carries its past openly, not as a burden, but as a foundation. Throughout its history, Sicily has been repeatedly tested by sudden and overwhelming destruction. Earthquakes, eruptions, and natural disasters have struck without warning, forcing entire cities to confront loss and uncertainty. Yet what defines the island is not the scale of these catastrophes, but the way people responded to them. Sicily did not retreat from disaster. It rebuilt again and again. One of the most defining moments came at the end of the 17th century, when a massive earthquake devastated southeastern Sicily. Entire towns collapsed within minutes. Streets disappeared, churches fell, and thousands of lives were lost. For many regions, such destruction would have marked the end. For Sicily, it became a beginning. Rather than restoring cities exactly as they had been, communities chose to redesign them. Towns like Noto, Ragusa, and Modica were reconstructed with new plans, wider streets, and dramatic architectural forms. This period gave rise to what is now known as Sicilian Baroque, a style defined by movement, light, and emotion. Buildings were designed not only to endure, but to inspire. Curves replaced rigid lines, facades became expressive, and public spaces were reshaped to reflect a renewed sense of order after chaos. This rebuilding was not merely aesthetic. It reflected a deeper philosophy. The people of Sicily accepted that destruction was part of life on the island. Instead of clinging to the past, they embraced the opportunity to begin again. Cities were treated as living structures, capable of change rather than fixed monuments frozen in time. Catania offers another example of this resilience. Built from volcanic stone drawn directly from Mount Etna's eruptions, the city carries the memory of disaster in its very walls. Lava flows once altered its coastline and destroyed large sections of the city. Each time, Catania rebuilt using the materials left behind. What had caused destruction became the foundation for renewal. This pattern shaped the Sicilian mindset. Stability was never assumed. Permanence was never guaranteed. Life continued with an understanding that tomorrow could look very different from today. This awareness did not create fear. It created flexibility. People learned to value adaptability over control, endurance over certainty. Even in smaller towns, traces of past destruction remain visible. Uneven streets, altered building lines, and layers of construction reveal how cities evolved through crisis. These marks are not hidden. They are accepted as part of the urban landscape, reminders of challenges faced and overcome. Sicily's relationship with destruction explains much about its character. The island does not seek perfection or permanence. It seeks continuity. When faced with loss, it does not try to preserve what was exactly as it was. It reshapes reimagines, and moves forward. In this way, Sicily learned that survival is not about resisting change, but about rebuilding with intention. Sicily has never been shaped by one dominant capital. Unlike many regions where power flows from a single center, the island developed through a network of cities, each with its own identity, priorities, and relationship to the land and sea. This fragmentation was not a weakness. It became one of Sicily's defining strengths. Palermo, on the northern coast, grew as a city of constant movement and exchange. Its harbor connected it to Africa, the Middle East, and mainland Europe. Over centuries, Palermo absorbed influences from every direction. Arab gardens, Norman palaces, Baroque churches, and crowded markets exist side by side. The city never settled into a single form. It evolved through layers, reflecting the diversity of those who passed through and stayed. On the eastern coast, Catania developed under the shadow of Mount Etna. Its history is inseparable from the volcano's activity. Repeated destruction forced the city to adapt its layout, materials, and architecture. Built largely from dark volcanic stone, Catania carries a heavier, more resilient character. Life here reflects constant negotiation with natural forces rather than control over them. Farther south, Syracuse tells a different story. Once one of the most powerful cities of the ancient Greek world, it became a center of philosophy, science, and military innovation. Its decline did not erase its legacy. Ancient theaters, fortifications, and ruins remain woven into the modern city, shaping its quieter and more reflective identity. Inland towns developed along trade routes and agricultural zones, each shaped by geography rather than political authority. Hilltop settlements offered protection, visibility, and control over surrounding land. Coastal towns focused outward, tied to fishing, shipping, and trade. No single city ever dictated the island's direction for long. Power shifted, adapted, and redistributed over time. This lack of a permanent center prevented uniformity. Sicily did not standardize itself. Dialects changed from region to region. Customs varied between cities separated by only short distances. Architecture followed local needs rather than centralized planning. The island became a mosaic of distinct identities, connected by shared history but never fully unified. Even today, this decentralized structure remains visible. Sicily does not move to a single rhythm. Different cities respond differently to change. Modern development and global influence. Some embrace tourism and transformation. Others resist, preserving slower ways of life. This diversity creates tension, but also resilience. When one region struggles, others continue. The absence of a single center also shaped how Sicilians view authority. Power has always been temporary here. Control has always shifted. This history fostered a culture that values local knowledge, personal networks, and adaptability over distant rule. Trust is built close to home rather than imposed from above. Sicily's cities do not compete to represent the island as a whole. Each reflects one aspect of its complex identity. Together, they form a landscape that resists simplification. Sicily is not defined by one place, one voice, or one story. It is defined by many, existing side by side, shaping an island that never needed a single center to endure. For most islands, the sea creates distance. For Sicily, it has always done the opposite. The Mediterranean did not isolate the island, it connected it. Long before roads and borders shaped Europe, the sea was the primary route for movement, trade, and influence. Sicily's history cannot be separated from these waters, because nearly everything that arrived here came by ship. From ancient times, sailors approaching Sicily could see its coastline from far away. The island rose clearly from the horizon, offering harbors, fresh water, and fertile land. This visibility made Sicily impossible to overlook. Merchant vessels stopped to trade. Military fleets arrived to secure control. Explorers used the island as a reference point while navigating the central Mediterranean. The sea turned Sicily into a crossroads rather than a destination. This constant arrival shaped coastal communities. Ports became places of exchange, where languages mixed and customs overlapped. Goods from distant regions passed through Sicilian markets, linking the island to networks that stretched across the Mediterranean. Ideas traveled with these goods, influencing architecture, technology, and daily life. The sea brought opportunity, but it also brought instability. Control of surrounding waters often meant control of the island itself. Naval power determined who could protect trade routes and defend cities. This reality explains why Sicily was repeatedly drawn into larger conflicts. Empires did not come only for land. They came to command movement across the sea. For those who lived on the island, the Mediterranean was both provider and threat. Fishing communities depended on its rhythms, learning to read winds, currents, and seasonal patterns. Storms could destroy fleets overnight, taking livelihoods with them. Yet the same waters offered food, trade, and connection to the wider world. Even Sicily's myths reflect this relationship. Ancient stories placed gods and monsters in these waters, using legend to explain danger and uncertainty. These stories were not escapism. They were a way of understanding life shaped by constant movement and risk. Today, ferries, cargo ships, and fishing boats still follow routes established thousands of years ago. Technology has reduced some dangers, but the sea remains unpredictable. It continues to shape economies, migration, and daily routines. The Mediterranean explains why Sicily could never be closed or controlled for long. Water does not respect borders. It invites movement and resists ownership. Sicily learned early that survival did not depend on isolation, but on engagement. The island did not turn away from the sea. It faced it, adapted to it, and became defined by it. Religion and belief in Sicily were never separate from daily life. They developed as practical responses to uncertainty rather than abstract systems imposed from above. Earthquakes, eruptions, invasion, and sudden change shaped how people understood the world around them. Faith became a way to explain forces that could not be controlled and a method of endurance rather than escape. Ancient myths arrived with Greek settlers and blended easily with the island's landscape. Stories of gods, monsters, and heroes were tied directly to mountains, caves, and the sea. These myths did not exist apart from reality. They explained why the land shook, why the volcano burned, and why the sea demanded respect. As new cultures arrived, belief systems layered rather than replaced one another. Roman traditions mixed with earlier myths, followed later by Christianity brought through empire and trade. Churches rose beside ancient temples, and sacred spaces shifted purpose without losing meaning. Belief adapted, just as cities and landscapes did. In Sicily, faith was not distant or purely spiritual. It was visible in architecture, processions, and daily routines. Baroque churches filled with light and movement reflected a desire to create beauty after destruction. Public rituals marked seasons, disasters, and survival itself. Religion became part of the island's rhythm rather than an escape from it. Even today, belief remains closely tied to place. Festivals honor saints who are associated with specific cities, streets, and histories. These celebrations are not performances for outsiders. They are expressions of continuity, linking generations through shared memory and experience. Faith here is lived, not observed. This relationship between belief and daily life explains much about Sicily's character. The island does not separate past from present or sacred from ordinary. Myth, religion, and routine exist together, shaping how people respond to change. Belief offers structure without demanding certainty. It allows life to continue even when the ground shifts beneath it. Throughout history, moments of crisis often strengthened these traditions. After earthquakes or eruptions, communities gathered not only to rebuild homes but to restore meaning. processions moved through damaged streets, and rituals acknowledged loss without denying hope. These acts reinforced a sense that survival was shared rather than individual. Belief became a social bond as much as a spiritual one. This blending of myth, faith, and everyday life continues to shape modern Sicily. While the island changes, these traditions provide continuity without resisting progress. They reflect an understanding learned over centuries that control is limited, but resilience is possible. In Sicily, belief is not about certainty. It is about learning how to endure. It is another layer in a long history of adaptation. A way of living with forces that cannot be avoided. And a reminder that meaning survives change. Away from the coast and the major cities, Sicily reveals another side of its identity. Here, life has always been shaped by the land itself. Rolling hills, dry plains, and fertile valleys created a landscape where survival depended on adaptation rather than abundance. Agriculture became not just an occupation, but a way of understanding time, risk, and reward. The island's interior developed around cycles of planting and harvest that changed little for centuries. Wheat fields stretched across open terrain, olive groves clung to rocky slopes, and vineyards followed the contours of volcanic soil. These crops did not appear by chance. They reflected generations of experimentation, learning which plants could survive drought, heat, and poor soil. Farming in Sicily was never easy, but it was reliable enough to sustain communities through long periods of instability. Land ownership shaped social structure as much as geography. Large estates dominated wide areas, while small villages formed around shared labor and seasonal work. Families depended on cooperation, trading labor, tools, and knowledge to survive difficult years. This created strong local bonds, but also deep inequalities that persisted for generations. Life was tied closely to place, and leaving the land was often the only path to change. Environmental limits forced efficiency. Water was precious. Soil erosion was constant. Farmers learned to conserve resources, terrace hillsides, and rotate crops. These practices were not guided by theory, but by necessity. Mistakes were costly, and success depended on observation and memory passed down through families. The land taught patience and restraint. Over time, this relationship shaped Sicilian character. People learned to accept hardship without surrendering to it. Work was steady rather than dramatic. Progress came slowly, measured across seasons rather than years. The rhythms of rural life created a sense of endurance that carried through periods of political change, invasion, and neglect. In the modern era, these patterns began to shift. Industrialization and urban growth pulled younger generations towards cities, and beyond the island itself. Many left Sicily entirely, seeking opportunity elsewhere. Yet the connection to the land did not disappear. Fields were abandoned, but traditions remained. Food, memory, and identity continued to trace back to rural origins. Even today, agriculture remains central to Sicily's image and economy. Olive oil, wine, and grain connect the island to global markets, while small farms preserve techniques shaped by centuries of experience. The land still demands respect. Droughts, changing weather, and economic pressure continue to test those who work it. Sicily's interior tells a quieter story than its cities or coastlines, but it is no less important. It reveals how ordinary life persisted between empires and disasters, how adaptation became instinct, and how a landscape that offered little forgiveness shaped people who learned how to endure. This relationship between land and labor remains one of the deepest foundations of Sicily's identity. For many Sicilians, the most difficult decision in history was not how to survive on the island, but whether to leave it. By the late 19th and early 20th centuries, economic pressure, land inequality, and limited opportunity pushed hundreds of thousands of people to look beyond Sicily's shores. Migration became another chapter in the island's long story of movement. Leaving Sicily was rarely a choice made lightly. Families were deeply tied to their land, villages, and traditions. Yet life in rural areas offered little chance for advancement. Poor harvests, lack of land ownership, and social divisions made the future uncertain. For many, departure became an act of hope rather than escape. The sea that once brought conquerors now carried Sicilians outward into the world. Ships departing from Palermo and other ports carried men and women to North and South America, Northern Europe, and beyond. These journeys were often one-way. Migrants left behind familiar landscapes, languages, and customs, stepping into societies where they were outsiders. Yet Sicily traveled with them. Traditions, food, music, and family structures were preserved abroad, reshaped by new environments, but never fully abandoned. Migration changed Sicily as much as it changed those who left. Villages lost entire generations. Fields went untended. Social structures weakened, but new connections formed across oceans. Money sent home supported families and rebuilt towns. Letters carried news, memories, and longing. Sicily became both a physical place and a shared idea, sustained by distance as much as presence. Those who remained experienced a quieter transformation. The absence of young workers altered rural life. Cities slowly absorbed returning migrants and outside influence. Over time, migration reshaped how Sicilians understood belonging. Identity became something carried internally rather than tied strictly to location. Being Sicilian no longer required living on the island. In the modern era, movement continues, though in different forms. Students leave for education. Workers travel for seasonal employment. Some return, bringing new skills and perspectives. Others remain abroad, connected through family, technology, and shared memory. The island's relationship with migration remains active rather than historical. This long history of departure explains much about Sicily's global presence. Sicilian communities exist across continents, forming networks that extend far beyond the Mediterranean. These communities carry stories of endurance, adaptation, and loss. They reflect the island's ability to survive not only through continuity, but through dispersion. Migration did not weaken Sicily's identity, it expanded it. The island learned that belonging could stretch across oceans without breaking. Memory became portable. Culture adapted. Just as Sicily absorbed influence from those who arrived, it shaped those who left. Movement became another way the island endured. Power in Sicily has rarely been distant or abstract. For centuries, authority arrived from elsewhere, imposed by rulers who governed the island without fully belonging to it. This pattern shaped how people understood control, loyalty, and survival. Trust was not placed in institutions. It was placed in families, neighbors, and local networks. Foreign rule often meant decisions made far from the island itself. Laws, taxes, and systems were introduced without regard for local conditions. For ordinary Sicilians, authority felt temporary and unreliable. Governments changed, rulers came and went, but daily life continued under the same pressures. This history encouraged a practical mindset. Survival depended less on promises from above and more on relationships close to home. In rural areas and crowded cities alike, people learned to rely on informal systems of support. Families became the primary source of protection and stability. Community bonds mattered more than official rules. Loyalty was personal rather than political. These patterns did not emerge from rebellion alone. They grew from repeated experience with distant power that failed to provide security. Over time, this absence of trust created space for alternative structures of control. Where official authority felt weak or inconsistent, local systems stepped in. These systems offered order and protection, but often demanded obedience in return. They reflected the same logic that shaped much of Sicilian life. Stability was valued more than legality, predictability more than ideals. This dynamic shaped Sicily's reputation far beyond the island itself. Outsiders often misunderstood these structures, reducing them to simple labels. But the reality was more complex. These systems were not created from chaos. They emerged from long periods of uncertainty, where people needed ways to manage risk and enforce agreements when formal institutions failed. At the same time, resistance always existed. Sicily has a long tradition of defiance against imposed control. Protests, local movements, and cultural expression pushed back against exploitation and neglect. Music, literature, and public memory preserve stories of injustice and endurance. These voices reminded the island that power was not absolute and that authority could be questioned. In recent decades, change has been gradual but real. Stronger institutions, education, and civic engagement have challenged older patterns. Younger generations approach authority differently, shaped by global connections and new expectations. Trust remains cautious, but it is no longer absent. Sicily continues to renegotiate its relationship with power. This history explains why Sicilian identity is grounded in realism rather than idealism. Promises are weighed carefully. Authority is observed rather than assumed. Survival has always required awareness of shifting control. Power, in Sicily, is something to be understood, navigated, and limited rather than embraced without question. In the modern era, Sicily stands at a crossroads once again. The forces shaping the island today are different from those of the past, but the pressure of constant arrival remains familiar. Tourists, investors, and global attention now reach Sicily in ways that empires once did, bringing opportunity, visibility, and new challenges at the same time. Tourism has become one of the island's most visible industries. Visitors are drawn by history, landscapes, food, and a sense of authenticity that feels increasingly rare elsewhere. Ancient ruins, coastal towns, and historic cities now serve as stages for a global audience. For many communities, tourism offers jobs, restoration funds, and renewed life in places long affected by economic decline. Yet this attention comes with tension. As parts of Sicily adapt to meet external demand, others struggle to maintain balance. Historic centers risk becoming spaces designed more for visitors than residents. Seasonal economies create instability, with work concentrated in short periods of the year. Rising property prices place pressure on local families, particularly in popular coastal and urban areas. These changes are not uniform across the island. Some towns embrace transformation, seeing tourism as a path forward. Others resist, preserving slower rhythms of life rooted in local tradition. This uneven response reflects Sicily's long history of decentralization. There is no single strategy, no unified vision imposed from above. Each community negotiates change on its own terms. Modern infrastructure projects have also reshaped parts of the island. Roads, ports, and transportation links connect Sicily more closely to mainland Europe and global markets. At the same time, delays, incomplete projects, and political disputes reveal ongoing struggles with governance and long-term planning. Progress arrives unevenly, just as it always has. Despite these pressures, Sicily retains a strong sense of continuity. Daily life remains grounded in relationships, routine, and place. Markets open each morning. Families gather around shared meals. Local festivals continue to mark seasons and memory. These practices anchor communities as the world around them accelerates. Young Sicilians face choices shaped by this tension between tradition and change. Some leave in search of opportunity. Others stay, building new paths within familiar landscapes. Creative industries, sustainable agriculture, and cultural preservation projects reflect attempts to redefine the island's future without abandoning its past. Modern Sicily is neither frozen in history nor fully transformed by globalization. It exists in between, negotiating each new influence carefully. This balance echoes the island's deeper story. Change arrives. Sicily adapts. Identity is reshaped but not erased. The island's future will not be defined by a single industry or vision. It will emerge from countless local decisions shaped by geography, memory, and resilience. Just as in the past, Sicily continues forward without settling into one final form, remaining open, complex, and unfinished. To understand Sicily today, one must understand how deeply memory shapes identity on the island. History here is not distant or abstract. It lives in streets, family stories, and everyday habits passed quietly from one generation to the next. Belonging is not defined only by borders or citizenship, but by shared experience and long continuity. Sicilian identity was never built around a single origin story. Instead, it formed through accumulation. Generations learn to carry multiple influences without needing to choose between them. Language, food, gestures, and customs absorbed elements from different eras, creating something distinct without rejecting its sources. This layered identity allowed people to adapt without losing themselves. Family plays a central role in preserving this continuity. Stories are told at the table rather than in textbooks. Memory is reinforced through routine, repetition, and shared space. Even those who leave the island often carry this identity with them, shaped more by upbringing than geography. Sicily becomes something internal, carried rather than occupied. This sense of belonging explains why change is approached cautiously. New ideas are measured against lived experience. Progress is not rejected, but it is tested. What lasts is what fits into existing rhythms rather than replacing them. This careful negotiation reflects centuries of learning how to endure external pressure without surrendering internal coherence. Public space reinforces this connection to memory. Town squares, markets, and neighborhood streets remain central to social life. These places are not designed for efficiency alone. They exist to sustain interaction, recognition, and familiarity. Daily encounters reaffirm belonging in ways that formal institutions rarely do. Even conflict has shaped identity here. Periods of hardship, neglect, and imposed control strengthened local bonds. People learned to rely on one another rather than distant authority. This history fostered realism rather than optimism, patience rather than expectation. Identity became grounded in what could be trusted and known. In modern Sicily, this inherited mindset faces new challenges. Global culture moves quickly, often favoring simplicity over complexity. Yet Sicily resists easy definition. Its identity cannot be reduced to symbols or slogans. It remains rooted in nuance, contradiction, and memory. Belonging here does not require purity or permanence. It allows for departure and return. It survives distance. This flexibility explains how Sicily endured centuries of change without dissolving. Identity adapted without breaking, reshaped without disappearing. Sicily's memory is not nostalgia. It is a working tool. It guides behavior, informs decisions, and offers stability in uncertain conditions. Through memory, the island maintains coherence without rigidity. It remains open while staying grounded. In this way, identity becomes another form of resilience, not loud or dramatic, but persistent. Sicily does not announce who it is. It continues to be, shaped by memory, sustained by belonging, and carried forward by those who live it, wherever they may be. Sicily has never aimed to become complete. Throughout its history, the island has existed in a constant state of becoming, shaped by forces that arrived, altered the landscape, and moved on. What remains is not a finished identity, but a living one, formed through endurance rather than resolution. The island's story is often told through moments of conquest, disaster, and renewal. Yet what truly defines Sicily is what happens between those moments. Daily life continued while empires changed. Families adapted while borders shifted. Traditions survived without needing to be preserved deliberately. Continuity emerged not from stability, but from repetition. This unfinished quality is visible everywhere. Cities bear marks of multiple eras without hiding their contradictions. Ancient ruins stand beside modern buildings. Sacred spaces share streets with ordinary life. Nothing is sealed off in time. The past is present, not curated, and the present does not erase what came before. Sicily's relationship with change explains its resilience. The island does not resist transformation, but it does not surrender to it either. New influences are absorbed slowly, tested against lived experience, and reshaped to fit existing rhythms. What cannot adapt fades. What can endure becomes part of the whole. This process continues today. Economic pressure, global culture, and modern mobility reshape Sicily in visible ways. Young generations navigate a world that offers more options but fewer certainties. Some leave, some return. Others stay and redefine what it means to belong. The island responds, as it always has, without a single plan or outcome. What unites these responses is an understanding shaped by history. Control is temporary, certainty is rare. What lasts are relationships, memory, and place. Sicily does not promise permanence. It offers continuity. It teaches that survival depends on flexibility rather than dominance. For those who visit, Sicily may appear layered, chaotic, or unresolved. For those who live here, this incompleteness is familiar. It allows space for adaptation. It leaves room for contradiction. It prevents identity from becoming rigid or closed. Sicily's strength lies in its refusal to become one thing. It is not defined by a single culture, era, or narrative. It remains open, shaped by movement and return. An island formed by arrival, shaped by endurance, and sustained by memory. The story of Sicily does not conclude. It continues quietly, carried forward by ordinary life. In its streets, fields, and coastlines, the island remains unfinished, resilient, and deeply human. That is not a weakness. It is its legacy,